Welcome to Early Intervention Matters, the podcast that helps parents, teachers, and health professionals understand the diagnosis, treatment, care, and support of children with autism, ADHD, Tourette's, and other neurodevelopmental challenges. Your host, Dr. Inyang Takon, is a consultant neurodevelopment pediatrician, and she will provide insight through interviews, answering questions, and breaking down complicated topics. By sharing stories from parents and professionals in the field, we hope to make sense of what can be an overwhelming topic. Early intervention is crucial with children with developmental difficulties. Yes, early intervention matters. And now, here's your host, Dr. Inyang Takon.
Hello, everyone. This is Early Intervention Matters, the platform that discusses neurodevelopmental disorders and neurodiversity. You're welcome to this session. So I'm really pleased this evening. We've got a very, very lovely podcast session today because we're going to talk to someone who has a lot to share and which we're going to learn a lot from. And today I'm so lucky and privileged to have Jesse Mungai. He's an amazing young man, and we're going to learn as we go through this podcast today. I'll just ask Jesse to say a big hi before I introduce him. Jesse.
Yes, a pleasure to be here. Really looking forward to today's discussion. And thanks for me.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. So, just an introduction about Jesse. So, I've known Jesse for over 11 years. Jesse was one of my young people. I met Jesse at age 7 during my work as a pediatrician doing assessments on neurodiversity. So Jesse was referred to have further assessment then. I happen to have known Jesse's brother, who was also under my care. And his brother is also an amazing young man as well. So it was lovely to then meet Jesse for an assessment. And it struck me that Jesse was a very calm boy, very polite boy, very good-natured boy. Obviously, at that time, he didn't present in the typical way that you would see people with ADHD. He wasn't all over the place. He didn't have the classical hyperactivity, but Jesse will tell us a bit more about his symptoms. But he was just a very lovely boy, but obviously was struggling with the difficulties that we will be chatting about. Jesse went on to get a diagnosis of ADHD, and that's why I was following him up in the clinic. There were challenges along the way. We'll hear of some of them. And some of those difficulties included things at school and the support he was getting from school, challenges with treatment with medication. And there's just so much that we think it's very useful to share, as we feel that a lot of young people will benefit from this. And Jesse, one of the things that made me so excited was when Jesse was, leaving pediatric services, he came in, for his final visit. And there was just a transformation in Jesse. Jesse was the happiest I'd ever seen him. He was very confident. And I said, something has happened here, Jesse. Tell me, because he came in himself very confident, very happy. And he said to me, I'll never forget those words that, he's the happiest he's ever been. He's doing what he really loves doing. And he then told me about what he was doing. And I was blown away. I was so excited. And I just felt this is such a positive message and one that we really need to share and get people to listen to. So I invited Jesse to come and talk to us on the podcast, and I was really pleased he could do that. And so that's the basis of our conversation today. It's talking about the journey from the young person's point of view, and how you can, you can look at neurodiversity in a very positive way. We hear Jesse's strength. So just to introduce Jesse, Jesse is an 18-year-old entrepreneur and go-to-market engineer at Infuse. Infuse is a company where he builds AI-powered systems that helps businesses grow by improving how they reach and communicate with customers. So he works with businesses to improve their efficiency, they reach out. And he also runs his own company called Intrio Limited, which designs and implements custom AI tools for small and middle-sized businesses. It helps to automate tasks, save time, and increase performance. So Jesse was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 7, and it's played a huge role in shaping how he experiences the world. I think we'll start first by, Jesse, if you can just take us through that
Yeah.
early part, as much as you can remember, what led to you being referred, what can you remember of those times, what was happening, and the whole process of the assessment and the diagnosis. You're just saying also, don't
Yeah.
worry, because there are things that we can learn to do better from the whole process.
Of course. Yeah. So the process of getting diagnosed around 7. I think some of the earliest things I can remember. I can remember. I think a lot of young boys with ADHD get just the naughty boy label. In early primary school, my mum had experience with my brother, of course, with ADHD and autism, and I think she picked up on some of the signs. Um, the diagnosis for me at that age, I knew what it was, but it wasn't really too new, and it didn't really mean too much to me. But I noticed, some support in school, but I think, as we'll get into, a lot of room for improvement.
Good. So, can you remember what your symptoms were at school and at home? Can you remember what made mom think, just we need to get you assessed?
I think in school, I think my teachers probably would have described me as a lot of potential, very disruptive, very hyperactive. Used to have a lot of issues with other children. Used to have a lot of issues with teachers. I have a lot of disagreements. I think a lot of it came down to a lack of understanding, because I think there was so much happening in my head and so much emotions and thoughts and feelings that I couldn't express. And then reactions to those by teachers only worsened the symptoms. I think that was a big thing. I think it was around that age I started getting excluded as well from school. That would be due to conflicts with students, conflicts with teachers, and it just really just kind of spiraled. I think my mum realised something had to be done, and there was something going on.
Yes, and like you said, your mom had already been through it with your brother, isn't it? So she could pick up on the symptoms quite early, and she was very proactive about trying to get help for you, so which was really good. So after you got diagnosed, the what kind of support were you given at school?
At school, I don't remember it that clearly, but I remember I think there was a teacher or a teaching assistant type of person that I'd meet with and have conversations with. But I think the real reason that I don't remember too much impact from that is that from my memory, I don't think the people who are assigned to work with me and support me didn't actually have any power, so they could speak to me and understand what I was going through. If the head teacher doesn't agree and the head teacher has it out for me, then they really don't have the power to do anything about it. I can imagine it must have been difficult for them to sit and speak with me and see what I'm going through, and then just almost be powerless to do the change that needs to happen.
That's very interesting. So there are people who you would express things to, but they didn't have the power to make those changes. And did that frustrate you even more?
It frustrated me, definitely. I don't think I was fully aware of the dynamics, but something that I do remember quite clearly was, I think in year 4, I had a teacher, his name was Mr. Butler, and he really looked out for me. And he'd make, some allowances, like maybe if I was being disruptive, he'd let me just go sit outside the classroom with a friend and sit and chat with a friend, and he wouldn't penalise me for things that are usually classed as wrong, but actually aren't. So if I got on a table, it wouldn't be the end of the world for him. I quite distinctly remember my mum telling me that he was purposely trying to keep me away from the head teacher, because maybe there'd be something going on, I'd be causing disruption, and it'd be fine whilst he was handling it. But as soon as the head teacher or other members of staff came in, it would spiral. So I think that's why that shows how, because a lot of the time I think young people with ADHD, autism, and neurodiversity, there always tends to be one or two teachers who understand that, because teachers aren't heard or aren't allowed to do what they know.
That's really insightful. That's really insightful, and it gives us an insight into what happens within schools. So even if, you know, if everybody in the school is not on the same page, the change that is needed to support you may not happen. So even if you have 1 to 2 teachers, how did you get on with the other children? After your
The other
death?
children, it was quite mixed. There was some children who I was very close with. I did have a lot of close friends and a lot of good friends. But there was some that I think it's odd actually. I think it's the case a lot of the time with neurodiverse children, or children from difficult backgrounds, where there tends to be a large number of kids who will almost just felt like they didn't like me for some reason. Never figure out why, and that did frustrate me. But I was quite mixed. I did have close friends who look out for me, and I also had people who just could never seem to get on with me.
Did you experience any bullying at school?
Not really. Not really. I
Okay.
think it's a bit of a double-edged sword because I would I was very very defend myself. So if there was someone was I had quite a strong moral compass. I remember there was I think some boys chasing me around, and I'd just punch them. And teachers came, and yeah, it goes from there. Because that it got me in more trouble in some ways, but also it meant never really got to me.
Okay, that's interesting. So, what about the schoolwork? How were you coping with the work at school?
I don't remember it too clearly because of the level of distraction, and the fact that if something happens, it almost such it was the last thing on my mind really. I think when there's all these things happening and going on, and I'm trying to almost fix a problem that I don't understand. That's why I'd have teachers to me out so I wouldn't understand these things. I always felt like it's quite common that I just felt in fight or flight mode all the time. So I couldn't, work was the last thing on my mind.
That must have been so difficult, isn't it? It's like never feeling settled. And I think that, if anything, I remember some of those times when you would come, and I think you described some of those times during the sessions when we had follow-up sessions or review sessions that, you were battling with being understood. I remember that was usually one of the things that you felt, people don't understand you and all that. Yes. So, Jesse, can you remember what age you started medication?
I can't. I remember kind of it's a bit foggy, but I do remember. I remember having issues with the medication. I remember not sure what age I would have been. I think maybe year 5 potentially. Um,
Okay.
and I can remember trying. I remember trying different medications. I can remember having some. It's a story actually that I tell to a lot of people when I'm talking to people about considering medication or talking to colleagues at work who are thinking about medication for their children with ADHD. And I remember it quite clearly. I think it was the same medication that I take now, but it was the long release version. And I remember taking that and being sat in the corner of my front room, rocking back and forth the whole day. And then I tried the short release version, and it was completely fine. And that's really stands out to me. And also, I just want to share that with ADHD, there more often than not is something that fits you. It's just a case of persevering.
Mm, yes. So eventually you found the right medication that helped you, and you took that through the years and your exams and things. And do you take it every day?
I do, yes. I still take it every day. Over the years, there was a few periods of where I stopped taking medication. I think for a lot of year 11, I wasn't. And for a lot of my secondary years, I wasn't. Um, I can remember, I think around my GCSEs, I started taking them again. And that was a daily thing. I'd just be medicated during the time I was in school. But then after my GCSEs, since year 11, when I started trying to change the situation around me to better fit myself through work and other things. I started out since then. I've been taking them all day. So I'm medicated from morning till the evening.
Okay. So do you find that you work better when you're on the medication? because it's one of the things that young people always struggle with, and I'm sure there were points when you, like you said, points when you didn't take it,
Yeah,
the medication.
yeah, I think a lot of the reason why now I take it is just because I think now that I'm growing older, now that I'm goals that I set to a period of time, I found that when I was on and off and consistent on medication, I could be on target and focused for a week. I take a weekend and don't take my medication. It's almost like it's completely new. I've forgotten completely off the rails. So I find it helps me keep consistent and it helps me keep focused, not just whilst I'm medicated, but long.
Okay, for longer, and that helps your productivity as well.
Definitely.
Okay. So apart from your productivity, do you find that it's helped your kind of relationship with people and you
I do. I think part of the reason why it's helped my productivity, it does help me concentrate, of course, but I think a lot of it is the relationship I have with myself. Being medicated, just that constant noise, it just tends to dissipate. And I think, like in primary school with all the distractions going on, it makes it hard to think. And I find that if I'm unmedicated for a while, there's so much going on in my head that I can't. It's almost like I'll lose track, and it feels like everything's a blur. And when everything's a blur, you can't focus on relationships and on what matters.
Mm, mm. So you've described a bit of it, and just for people who have ADHD or people who don't understand what it feels for people who have ADHD, how would you describe your mind, your brain when you have untreated ADHD?
Um, I found it's a bit like I think a good example would be if I decide I'm going to do something, I can wake up in the morning and think, okay, I'm going to make myself a nice breakfast. So I'll get up, get dressed, get showered, go to the shops, come back and make my breakfast, and then I can get up out of bed, put my clothes on, and then see something on my phone, go onto my phone, and then remember that I need to do something in the kitchen. So I go down to the kitchen, and then I go upstairs and I do something, and by that point I've completely forgotten everything I was doing. And then I remember that I was going to go get food. So then I go downstairs to get food. I realize there's nothing in the fridge because I forgot to go out and get food. So I just go and have a shower. And it's almost just this immense inefficiency. And it's incredibly frustrating because it almost feels like whilst that's happening, you're not conscious of the fact that's happening. You're just switching and switching and switching without realizing it. And I've found that speaking to a lot of people, especially at work, ADHD and untreated, especially adults, I find they'll they're aware of they're aware of the effects, they're aware of the impact it has on their life, but they're not aware of what's actually happening. So they're aware of the fact that it might take them 5 hours to do a simple task, and they're aware of the fact that they forgot this thing from last month and now they've been putting it off every day, and they're aware of the downstream impacts, but they're not actually aware of it whilst it's happening because it's not really a conscious thing.
Yeah, I think you've described it beautifully. It is. I think you just described what a day in the life of somebody with untreated ADHD looks like. You start the day, you've got the plans, but then you're just moving from one thing to the other, and then you end up not being efficient, and your day can just keep going like that, and then one day goes to another, to another, to another. So yes, this and the long term effect does. You see young people with a lot of potential who could do so much, and how that impacts on them. So fast forward, you finished GCSE. So what happened after then?
after my GCSEs, I managed to get into sixth form. Just about past my GCSEs. I think, as the second person to go to sixth form from the school that I went to. Um, and I went there. Very, very, very big adjustment from the school I was at previously. The school I was at in secondary was 70 boys, all neurodiverse. So it was a very big switch. I think that adjustment was difficult, but then I did adjust. And at the start, it felt really good. I took it primarily for business, because I had a business at that time and I wanted to learn how to grow my business. And it started off really exciting, just that feeling of learning and growing. But very quickly, the fact that I'd signed up and I had lessons every day where I'd learn almost felt like it had trapped me. Because I started to want to learn and grow outside of the very, very, very specific path that is the curriculum. So I'd be knowing that, next month I'm going to be doing this unit and learning this, where really I've already read that bit and I want to learn something different, or I want to learn how to apply. I want to start doing things. So that was difficult. And I also just had some ADHD related things, like always being late in, and never submitting my homework. But
Fantastic. So what did you do after that? So
like,
you left sixth form, yeah? You did the first year. Okay.
I did the first year. Over some holidays, I did almost like a fundraising type role, just out and about in London, selling magazines from a company. It's called Inspiring Me. It's all young youths just out doing that, and just did that for a small period over some holidays, and very quickly realised whether I was going to continue doing that or not. I wasn't going to go back to sixth form. I just realised that I want to be in control of my growth, and I felt almost as if being at sixth form, I was limited to learning what's on the curriculum, and I was limited to learning it, growing at the rate of, we're doing this unit this month and this unit this month. And I felt that I could do more. I felt that I needed more. I think a lot of that is down to ADHD, that need to go fast and that need to actually feel the impact rather than just learning some theory. I wanted to know it in practice, and I wanted to do it, and I wanted to feel the impact.
Great. Yeah. So you then took the leap, and how did you then join your current company?
I was fundraising in Moorgate. Moorgate was one of my favourite places to work. So I'd walk up to people and talk to them, and also learn about what they do. Because I didn't, the role I'm in now in the company, in the industry, I didn't know it existed at that point. And I walked up to a man who ended up being my boss, and he stopped me, and he just said that he's got an office down the road and he'd like to offer me a job. I had no clue what the company was or what the job was, but I accepted it. And yeah, started in September.
That's an amazing story. So you were out there doing something else, and then you met your boss. That's just so. What was did you find out from your boss what made him give you the job then?
I think he just said that I was trying to ask him for, I think it was £10 or £20. I was telling him that, if he buys the magazine, it will fund courses for young people. And he said to me that the reason he didn't give me any money and offer me a job is because he said that he wanted to do his bit for young people. And he wanted to help people who had come from similar circumstances in a much more impactful way. And he said he wanted to use his platform to give opportunities.
Good. That's amazing. Yeah. So you joined the company, and could you tell us a bit more about your role in the company?
Yeah, of course. So the role originally was SDR, which is Sales Development Representative. So it's essentially, I was the first point of contact for new clients. I spend my days reaching out to people, whether it be by the phone, email, LinkedIn messages, just really looking, thinking, I've got this list of people, finding people who might be relevant or might be a good fit, and then trying to get them to understand that.
Good. And you enjoyed your job.
I did.
So,
I really did, yeah. I
yeah.
think sales is something that I really do encourage for people with ADHD, because it's something where the complete opposite to the problems I had in sixth form, where you are constantly learning. Every day is a challenge, but it's also incredibly rewarding. And I have conversations with friends who work in maybe retail or hospitality, and something that really, for me, the reason I love sales is because there's clear metrics. You can see your success, and as you try harder, as you learn more things, you can see yourself doing more, whether it be booking more meetings, having more conversations, having more clients, and there's that instant reward. But also, I had periods where for months I wouldn't book any meetings, which was the objective of that role. But I'd keep at it, and then all of a sudden I'd succeed. And I think that's something that fits the way the ADHD brain works, but also strengthens some of the things that I think often hold people with ADHD back. It really taught me about that resilience, and that I'll keep going for a month, because you never know when you're going to have your big win.
Good. So you've been working there for how long now?
9.5 months now. Yeah, moved into my new role this week, actually.
And your new role is
It's got me a market engineer.
big. And what does that involve?
That it's a fairly new role. I've kind of figured that I almost went into that on accident. In my SDR role, I've kind of felt a bit. I felt that I grew to grow tired of it a little bit, because it was such an amazing role, but at the same time it was just the same every day, and I just felt like I needed something where I could. The purpose of the role was to grow out of it. I felt like I needed something where I could not just apply myself in one way, but use all of the different parts of my brain and my skills. And that's what I do here. So it's a mix of kind of sales, marketing, some technical bits, but I'm working across teams, across regions, across lots of different things. And that's something that I'm really, really enjoying, because I've found, whether it be in sixth form or in my previous role, or just throughout life, that I'd start something, and then I'd have the dopamine of it being new, but then 6 months later, I'm ready to move on. And this is a role where it's evolving, and it's something that I'm constantly got a new challenge.
Very good. So, Jesse, you talked about the skills. What skills would you say you had that, when you evaluate yourself, what would you say were the positive skills for you? Because sometimes it's one of the things that sometimes people with ADHD struggle to reflect on and be able to pull out the positives from themselves, because they've had all this negative experience, particularly throughout school, that they haven't actually stopped to think that actually I have a lot of good skills. What would you say were the skills you had?
Um, First, I just want to say quickly on that point. I think part of the reason why myself and other people with ADHD struggle to recognize their skills is because they're measured the wrong way. I used an analogy that a friend of mine said stuck with him, so I think I'll share it. And it was that it's the ADHD brain. It's almost like you're in a car and you're in fourth gear going at 20 miles an hour, or you're a Lamborghini driving around 20-mile-an-hour roads in traffic when you really need to be on the racetrack. And I think as soon as you take the same person, the same brain with the same skills, and put them in a different environment, they absolutely shine. I think it is that ability to be so fast-paced, and the ability to, even though the ADHD brain, we may struggle to just focus on one thing for 6 months, which is a negative in some situations. But the fact that I can, have my eye on 5 different things at once and be very quickly moving and have an idea and then quickly execute it and do something, when put in the right environment, is such a strength.
Fantastic. That's really good. So you can see you've described why people have a lot of frustrations, and some of those frustrations, when it comes out at school, the teachers don't understand. And sometimes those frustrations are the children are being penalized because they're just in the wrong fit. They're just, they want to do more. They want to do things, and they're just being put in a boring, same thing situation. Because unfortunately, schools are not adapted. The schools are just one size fits all. So it's very difficult. Yeah. So how did you? Can you tell us a bit about, because obviously you have a lot of insight into how your brain works and what was positive for you. How did you develop that? How did you appraise yourself? How did you become self-aware?
And I think part of it is I just try to be as attached to reality as possible. I try to view, I think there's a lot of things that's very easy to view as bad or as good, whereas in reality they're just a thing and they're just neutral. Like the ability to do many things at once. If you view it in a school, or then it's negative, but if you're in a role like mine or you have a business, it's a massive strength. And I think a lot of that just comes down to viewing things just as what they are, and the ability to reframe. Another thing I think would be just taking action. I think quite often people with, whether it be ADHD or autism or anxiety, any number of things, can tend to circle and can tend to almost get stuck in their own head. That's something that I struggled with as well. And I think often it can look like, I can't do this because I've got to do this first, or indecision because, they don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. I had that. I didn't know what I wanted to do for work. I didn't know whether I wanted to go to sixth form, where I wanted to stay. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my friends at the weekend, anything like that. And I think a lot of the strength just comes down to understanding that the only way to get that clarity is through taking some sort of action, whether it's big or small, because the reason I now know what to do is because I've taken so many actions and I've failed so many times that I have that mass of context. I think just taking a leap and just any opportunity, whether it be work related or even an opportunity to meet new people or try things in a different way. Once you've done that, and once you've tried the new approach, maybe it's trying a new calendar, a new system to keep track of what you're doing, or just a new way to relax. Trying those things all the time, very, very quickly, just means that I know in detail what works for me and what doesn't, and I'm able to piece together how my brain works and what I'm good at just through what doesn't.
That's very good. You've given us a lot of very useful tips there. I think one of the great things you brought out is people not giving up even when they failed. Because sometimes you say, they've tried that, it didn't work, so they've given up. Even though that thing might be a great interest of theirs, they give up. And, people just go off that and they then get demoralized because they feel they've tried it a few times. And if other people around them are not patient with them and are not offering that kind of support they need, then people can get quite negative about themselves. Yeah, so I think that's really quite good. As we always say, early intervention leads to better outcome, and early intervention can only be achieved by early diagnosis. So thank you for listening into the series today. I know some of the things we've talked about today would probably have generated some questions or need to seek clarification. So I'm happy to take questions, and I'll invite you to send your questions to eim@drtakon.com. Thank you for listening in.